Here is the story of the last vote. The elite halls of Sungjin Girls High School hid a secret beneath its polished floors and pristine uniforms, a brutal game of hierarchy called the pyramid game. The pyramid game is a cruel system of social hierarchy within Sungjin Girls High School, specifically among the students of Class 2 and 3. It's a twisted form of survival where every month the girls vote to decide their own ranks, ranging from A to F. Here's how the pyramid game works. Ranking. Every month, each girl in Class 2 and 3 votes for the other girls, determining the ranking. The top. Those who consistently receive high rankings, achieving in a status, are treated like queens. They enjoy privileges, popularity, and hold a significant amount of power. The bottom. Girls who consistently end up at the bottom, with an F ranking, become the prey. They are despised, ignored, and often forced to do favors or tasks for those with higher rankings. No teacher intervention. The school's administration doesn't interfere. They have an unspoken rule of letting the students handle this system of hierarchy themselves. Control. It's a game of social manipulation and power dynamics where the girls learn to navigate the system and fight for their place. Essentially, the pyramid game is a brutal system of social control that traps the students in a constant cycle of competition, fear, and manipulation. It creates a toxic environment where the girls are pitted against each other instead of supporting each other. Minji Seo had always hovered at the edges, her grades keeping her afloat in the middle tier. She had spent years perfecting the art of blending in, careful never to attract too much attention. But when a sudden shift in alliances pushed her down to the dreaded F rank, she learned firsthand what it meant to be at the bottom, despised, ignored, and forced into servitude. The school's unspoken rule was simple. No teachers interfered. This was the students' game, their own twisted form of survival. Unlike the others who accepted their fate, Minji refused to become another broken girl. She started observing, memorizing patterns, who whispered to whom, who decided the votes, and most importantly, who had the real power. The obvious answer was Yerin Kang, the queen of Class 2 and 3, who sat at the top every single month without fail. But Minji saw something else. Power wasn't just about being voted a. It was about controlling the votes. Minji's strategy was simple: divide and conquer. She began sowing discord among Yerin's circle, feeding small lies, exposing hidden secrets, and framing betrayals that never existed. As friendships crumbled and trust eroded, Yerin found herself vulnerable for the first time. Meanwhile, Minji quietly built her own alliances, rallying the unnoticed, the outcasts, those too afraid to fight back before. The more Minji dug, the more. The pyramid game wasn't just a cruel tradition. It was a system deliberately maintained by certain students, a cycle of control passed down from previous years. She learned of the secret meetings where top-ranked students decided who would be thrown to the wolves next. She learned of the teachers who turned a blind eye not out of ignorance, but out of complicity. The game had existed for decades, and anyone who truly opposed it mysteriously transferred out before their fight could gain momentum. But Minji was different. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for every girl who had been broken by the system. As she built her strategy, she reached out to those who had suffered before her. Former F ranks, girls who had dropped out or left the school, and even some students who had transferred away but still carried the scars of the game. They shared their stories, their pain, and their desire to see the system crumble. Minji recorded everything: evidence of the bullying, testimonies, and even whispers of a deeper, more sinister force at play in the school's administration. When the next vote arrived, the unthinkable happened. Yerin Kang was pushed down to C rank, while Minji Seo climbed to A. The class was in shock. But Minji wasn't done yet. She stood before them, the weight of her victory settling in. "This game is a lie," she declared. "It's not about who's the best. It's about who controls you." And I say we stop playing. Silence filled the room. Then slowly, one by one, hands began to rise. A new vote was cast not for ranks, but for the game itself. The pyramid game ended that day. But in the shadows, someone watched. Someone who thrived in chaos. And as Minji walked out victorious, she felt it a chill down her spine. Because in a school like Sungjin, games never truly ended. They only changed. That night, as Minji lay in bed, her phone buzzed. A blocked number. Hesitating for only a moment, she answered. "You think it's over?" A voice whispered. "You have no idea what you've started." The line went dead. Minji sat up, heart pounding. She had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Because when power is taken from one, another always rises to claim it. The next morning, the school was abuzz with rumors. Someone had spread word that Minji had rigged the votes, that she had manipulated everyone just like Yerin had. Anonymous messages flooded the school's group chat, warning of a new hierarchy rising from the ashes of the old. But this time, it was more dangerous. It was invisible. Students began to act strangely. Whispers in the hallways, furtive glances, and the distinct feeling that someone was always watching. Minji knew she had struck a nerve, but she hadn't expected the backlash to come so swiftly. Then, the first incident happened. A girl named Jisoo, who had helped Minji expose the game, found her locker ransacked, her books torn, her name scrawled on the walls in red ink. Traitor. The message was clear. Someone wanted revenge. And they weren't playing by the old rules anymore. Determined to uncover the mastermind behind the retaliation, Minji dug deeper. She traced the anonymous messages to a hidden group within the school, a faction that had operated from the shadows, controlling the game all along. They were something more, a network that stretched beyond Sungjin, perhaps even beyond high school itself. The deeper Minji looked, the more horrifying the truth became. The pyramid game had never truly been about social status. It had been an experiment, a controlled test of manipulation, power, and fear. And Minji had unknowingly stepped into something much bigger than herself. As the days passed, Minji found herself in a dangerous game of cat and mouse. The more she fought, the harder the unseen force pushed back. Threats escalated from online whispers to real-world actions. Her family received strange phone calls. Her closest allies started disappearing from school one by one, and even the teachers who had seemed indifferent before now carried an air of nervous tension. Minji realized the truth. She had only scratched the surface of something far more sinister, and she was running out of time. The final confrontation was inevitable. Minji gathered her remaining allies, preparing for one last stand, not just to end the pyramid game, but to expose the system that had allowed it to thrive for so long. But as she stepped into the school's empty auditorium, the place where it all began, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't the only one watching. The real game was just beginning. Minji took a deep breath, steadying herself. The auditorium was dark, save for the dim glow of the emergency lights casting long, eerie shadows across the stage. Her allies Jisoo, Hyen, and a handful of other girls who had seen the truth stood behind her, their faces set with determination and fear. They had come prepared, ready to expose everything. But they weren't alone. From the darkness, a slow clap echoed. A figure stepped into the faint light, their silhouette sharp and confident. It was someone Minji had not expected. Hana Choi, a girl who had always stayed neutral, neither too high nor too low in the rankings. Hana smirked. "Impressive, Minji. You almost made me believe you could win." Minji narrowed her eyes. "Almost?" Hannah took a step closer, her voice low and deliberate. You are right about the game being bigger than Yerin. But you are wrong about who really controls it. A sharp chill ran down Minji's spine. It's you, she realized. You were behind it all. Hannah let out a soft chuckle. Not just me. The pyramid game isn't just a school tradition, it's a test. A recruitment tool. The strongest, the smartest, the most ruthless. They rise to the top. And those who challenge the system. She tilted her head. They disappear. Jisoo clenched her fists. You're sick. Hannah ignored her. We watched you, Minji. You played the game better than anyone. You didn't just survive, you changed the rules. She took another step forward. That's why I'm offering you a choice. Minji's heart pounded. A choice? Join us. Hannah's smile was razor sharp. Think about it. You saw what happened when you took Yerin down. The hierarchy didn't crumble, it shifted. Power doesn't disappear, Minji. It just finds a new owner. And right now, that owner could be you. The room was deathly silent. Minji felt every gaze on her, waiting for her answer. She had fought so hard to end this, to destroy the system that had broken so many. But Hannah was right about one thing. Power never truly vanished. If Minji refused, someone else would take control. Someone worse. Minji inhaled sharply. I do have a choice, Hannah. And I choose to burn your system to the ground. Hannah's smirk faltered. That's disappointing. The light suddenly flickered on, and a dozen students stepped out from the shadows. All of them were ranked A or B, the school's elite Hannah's followers. They stood in formation, blocking the exits. Hannah sighed. I was hoping you'd be reasonable. Minji glanced at her allies, each of them bracing themselves. They were outnumbered, but they weren't outmatched. They had come with evidence recordings, documents, testimonies. And more than that, they had come with something Hannah didn't understand, a purpose greater than power. Minji pulled out her phone and hit send. Instantly, messages, files, and videos spread across the school's networks exposing everything. The hidden meetings, the rigged votes, the teacher's complicity, and now the final confrontation in the auditorium. It was all out in the open. Hannah's expression darkened as her phone vibrated repeatedly. The murmurs of her followers grew louder as they checked their own devices, uncertainty flickering. The power Hannah had wielded so effortlessly was slipping through her fingers. Minji stepped forward, her voice unwavering. The pyramid game is over, and so are you. For the first time, Hannah looked unsure. She opened her mouth to speak, but the sound of approaching footsteps cut her off. The doors burst open, and for the first time in Sungjin's history, teachers entered the battlefield. The chaos that followed was unlike anything the school had seen. Authorities were called, parents were notified, and the school board had no choice but to act. The pyramid game, once an unspoken rule, was now a scandal on every news channel. Hannah and her network were exposed, their influence shattered. Some transferred, some were expelled, and others simply faded into obscurity. And Minji? She walked through the halls of Sungjin not as in a rank, not as a queen, but as something far more powerful. A survivor. Months later, as she sat in a quiet cafe, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside, a single line of text. The game never ends. It only changes.
And that wraps up the last vote. This story is inspired by the Korean drama Pyramid Game, a chilling look at power and survival in a ruthless hierarchy. Minji may have ended one game, but as we've seen, power never truly disappears, it just changes hands. What would you have done in her place? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.